and it's about Joe Exotic and Carol Baskin. Joe Exotic was, I don't know how to put this nicely, but a redneck who owned a bunch of big cats illegally. And then Carol Baskin was an advocate to try and save the cats. She's owner of Big Cat Rescue. So it was a documentary that was put on Netflix. And as much as it interested me, it also made me realize on how big of a problem keeping exotic pets as animals, exotic animals as pets has become. So owning an exotic pet requires enormous amounts of care regarding like their food and their shelter, and it's very different versus a domesticated like house cat or a dog. It's also really dangerous to own them because they grow in size and strength very quickly, and they have a very unpredictable nature to them. And they also can carry diseases if they are brought from the wild right into captivity that are dangerous to humans. Today I'm going to be talking about what to do if someone can no longer take care of an exotic animal and the dangers of owning an exotic animal. So according to Born Free USA, it's a campaign aimed at saving exotic animals in captivity. It's really easy to get an exotic pet. More than 1,000 internet sites offer to sell, give care advice, and provide chat rooms where buyers and sellers can haggle over price. So when you visit these sites, they don't tell you about the physical needs of the animal or the mental needs of the animal. They just are there to make money. The dangers of owning an exotic pet not only endangers the animal, but it also endangers the owner. People are put at risk every day when there are accidental escapes of the animals, along with purposeful escapes when people get rid of their pet and they just throw them out in the wild. So an example of this would be the Burmese python. So in the 1980s in Florida, the Burmese python was not native, but they were finding about 7-foot long anaconda snakes in the Everglades. And they figured that since it was not native to Florida, people were probably owning them when they were little, and then when they got obviously too big to keep them, they would throw them out in the Everglades. So according to AZA, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, many animals can bite, scratch, and attack the owner of children or guests. So animal owners, if that happens, they are legally responsible for any damage or injuries that the animal caused. The owner has to be willing to pay the price financially and physically if they get injured. But what happens if an animal gets too big to take care of? According to Big Cat Rescue, once they're too old to breed, they're talking about tiger cubs here, they may be killed and sold on the black market for their bones, furs, eyes, whiskers, heads, and claws. Again, owning an exotic animal requires extensive care. For a big cat, there must be a special vet to take care of them and treat the animal. You can't just take them down to your local veterinarian. Dietary needs are often what exotic animals are lacking. Since they're taken out of their natural habitat, or if they're born into captivity, they're not usually getting enough nutrients that they should need. Big cats are carnivores and they require a lot of meat. They can eat up to 15 pounds of meat per day. That source is from Spruce Pets. The animals also need large amounts of space to roam and to be tested mentally. These animals are very big, and if they're not physically and mentally stimulated, they'll get very bored. However, many people do think that owning an exotic animal or a big cat is okay. So signed in December of 2003, the CWSA, Captive Wildlife Safety Act, it states that it's illegal to import, export, buy, sell, or transport or acquire certain live big cats across state lines or U.S. border. But you may be thinking, so if there's a law, how come people are still owning them? This law doesn't prevent anyone from breeding tigers, which is what, if you watch Tiger King, that's what Joe Exotic would do. He had tigers in the past and he would always breed them, so he'd have cubs to keep his zoo growing. So just because there's this law, it doesn't prevent people from breeding more and keeping them in captivity. But some do argue that there is a reason to keep exotic animals as pets. The term exotic is subjective. So anything exotic is anything that is not a dog, a cat, or like a livestock animal. So an exotic pet could be a lizard, a spider, a snake. But in terms of this speech, we've been looking at big cats, anacondas, anything out of the ordinary, or like a puma, something like that. Many people believe that an exotic pet will not carry disease because if they're bred in captivity, they have not been exposed to the diseases that they get out in the wild. So captive bred animals are scarcely associated with significant disease outbreaks. And it comes down to people's wants and needs. Some individuals would want an animal like a big cat that lives 20 plus years rather than a dog or a cat that can only live about 10 to 15. In conclusion, if there's a situation where an animal cannot be kept, even if it's an exotic animal that's illegal to own, the right thing to do, according to the Progressive Animal Welfare Society, or PAWS, is to take them to a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. The sooner the animal can be evaluated and given the proper care, the greater the change the animal may be returned to the wild. So according to the International Fund for Animal Welfare, captive, privately owned big cats are regular subjects to mistreatment and miserable living conditions, and those who exploit them often misrepresent these activities as conservation. IFAW will come in handy when this happens, and they'll try and get the big cats to a qualified sanctuary. Once an animal has been brought into captivity or bred into captivity, they sadly cannot be released to the wild since they've lost many of their natural habits and instincts. Therefore, they have to be brought to a sanctuary to be cared for until they pass. So today we talked about the dangers of owning an exotic pet, the care that an exotic pet would need, and what you should do if you know someone who owns one when they shouldn't.